What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another video where I speak about all things music related. And in today's video, as you can already tell by the title, I will be speaking about Ghetts' latest album, Conflict of Interest. Now, Ghetts is undoubtedly UK royalty within the music scene. Having done grime for well over 15 years, his ability is absolutely unmatched. Everything from lyricism to presence, he is one of the greats in music, and there's no debating it. There's no debating it whatsoever. And now that he's released his 6th studio album, there is honestly so much to talk about. And the analogy I get from this album is when Jay-Z released 444. And I know that is a bit of a stretch. I know that's a bit of like, yes, we can't compare UK to US artists. But in terms of Ghetts has gone from moments where he's just been shelling his career, shelling projects, shelling freestyle, shelling radio. And now he's in a very contemplative mood. He's in a very introspective mood on this album. But on top of that, he just goes back to his old roots. And you can tell that he has not lost a single speck of talent. And so, without further ado, my name is Archibald III, and in today's review, I will be speaking about Ghetts' 6th studio album, Conflict of Interest. Now, cue my intro because I need to review this now. So the first track on the album, Fine Wine, starts off with such a grand opening. It honestly prepares you for what you're about to hear. Hearing Ghetts open a bottle of wine, pour it into a glass, honestly is very symbolic of him trying to sit you down within his own presence and tell you about the things that he's going through, tell you about the things that's on his mind. As he contemplates his past troubles, his trials and tribulations, but also how far he's gotten into music and how far he is in his career is very, very refreshing. And honestly, just as the title says, Ghetts' career, Ghetts' ability, and Ghetts as a person has honestly aged like fine wine. And when you listen to the production behind the song, you can hear the orchestral presence that is there. And Ghetts is no stranger to that when it comes to his production. There's a reason why he does that. It brings a sense of royalty. It brings a sense of presence whenever Ghetts spits on a track that has this level of production. And it clocking in at 4.5 minutes, this is an absolutely amazing way to intro the album. And it really sets the pace for what we're about to hear moving forward. This song definitely reminds me of his Mad About Bars freestyle, which I can honestly say is the best Mad About Bars freestyle. It's honestly one of Ghetts' best freestyle. And when you listen to the lyrics in his Mad About Bars freestyle and in Fine Wine, you can really see the relation between the two and the things that he speaks about. His wordplay is absolutely amazing, and you can just tell how versatile Ghetts is as an artist. Even referencing moments where he says rap, grime, or not, I'm a pocket finder, I know how to find a spot. And even having moments where he says, I've had you here for too long, go and listen to the rest of the album, please, just shows how creative and just how cocky and at the same time how cheeky his lyrics can be throughout the album. Now, the transition into the next song, Mozambique, was so seamless that I genuinely thought that Fine Wine was still continuing. But on top of that, the way in which Ghetts just provides us with a poetic 43 seconds speaking about how you can't let your anxiety get the best of you, how you need to tap into your past, present and future self. And that's very referenced in the album artwork made by Kente Kwame. If you look at the album, you see a past version of Ghetts, you see a junior version of Ghetts, and you see the current present version of Ghetts. And within that 40 seconds, he speaks about how it's so important to look at yourself in the mirror and understand how great you are and understand how amazing you are as an individual and how you cannot let anxiety get the best of you and how you need to remind yourself of the talent that you have and what you can cultivate within the world that you've been born into. And having that before it just seamlessly goes into the main track, which is Mozambique, honestly speaks volumes. Usually with a pre-release track, sometimes an artist might just slap it on, but Ghetts honestly takes it a step further by adding these 40 seconds. And then on top of that, you can hear the production difference from the pre-release into the one that's in the album. And it just makes it all the more beautiful. It just, those little touches, those little things really add to the overall experience. For someone like myself who had previously heard this song, and hearing it again just sounds so fresh, like I've never heard it before. Now, before I get into the next track, it's very worth mentioning how beautifully structured this album is. The first third and the last third of the album is essentially Ghetts just going into his own element. Ghetts knowing and doing what he does best, doing what is natural to him, and that is ripping a very hardcore beat and just spitting hard lyricism. Whereas the second half and the midsection of the album is dedicated to Ghetts' psyche, is more dedicated to the introspective thoughts that go on through Ghetts' mind. A very reflective version of Ghetts, speaking about love, speaking about loss, but also speaking about family and the importance of having the finer things in life within you. And so this was something that honestly was surprising to me, but at the same time I wasn't surprised, because this is something that Ghetts has done before with his previous album, Ghetto Gospel, The New Testament. Now, Fire and Brimstone was another track that I thoroughly enjoyed. Hearing Dizzy Rascal speak about his comeuppance in grime and meeting prominent members such as Marcus Nasty and Ghetts alongside other members while he was growing up in East London was honestly a beautiful touch to the song. That, on top of the fact that you can hear him just in the background, just blaring music, just blaring lyrics throughout the left and right side of my headphones, was honestly a beautiful sensory experience. And so having this track that was semi-dedicated to Dizzy Rascal and yet at the same time having so many references to him was a very, very nice touch to this particular song. Moving on to the next song, Hop Out, it was actually very nice to hear how Ghetts at the very beginning of the track say that he switched up the vehicle, but also at the same time at which the beat switches up. So for me, I don't know whether that was me looking too deeply into it, but I really liked that kind of subtle moment that happened, and it kind of just added to just, again, the overall experience of listening to the album. Hearing Ghetts speak about his wild escapades, dealing with cars, taking them and reselling them, and even having a cheeky moment where he says, you know, where did you get that car from? It was either from me or from someone else that I was doing these types of jobs with, was honestly a very fulfilling but yet braggadocious moment for him, and I honestly enjoyed listening to that. That, coupled with the hard beats and the nice kicks and his subtle tone, just kind of sounds like he's just braggadociously speaking about the past and how well he used to indulge in these things. And then that, coupled with the back end of the track where he used to say, you know, he used to pull up in these cars next to his teachers while going to school at such a young age, and it was such a fulfilling moment for him because then he just felt like he was on top of the world. And hearing that side to Ghetts is honestly very cool. It's very nice to sort of hear him speak about these type of things in this type of way throughout the album. And honestly, it was definitely one of my favorite songs on this project. And then also a nice little tidbit was hearing D-Double's famous sound cameo in the track, which honestly made me feel like he was going to make an appearance, which he sadly didn't, but it honestly didn't take away anything from the song overall, which was very good. Moving on to another pre-released track titled IC3 featuring Skepta. This was another tune that I absolutely enjoy. One thing you need to know about Ghetts and Skepta is that these guys have gone back to back on radio freestyles, on projects. I'm going to put a link in the description of maybe one or two freestyles that Ghetts and Skepta have done together, and you will see how far back these two go. You will see how far back the chemistry these two have, and that is very reflective in IC3. When this song was pre-released, I was honestly excited to see these two come back together, and it's honestly very evident in this track how well these two just have a strong bond and such a strong chemistry, going back and forth and finishing each other's lyrics, adding to each other's bars. It's honestly just an amazing verbal spar going on in this track, and I enjoyed it when it was pre-released, and I still enjoy it even more listening to it now. One of my favorite lyrics is, how can you tell me to go back to where I came from when the queen sits there in stolen jewels? Because that is an absolute fact. Every European country should return the jewels that they have taken from the motherland. But anyways, moving on to the next track. Autobiography starts off amazingly with a voice note from his mother explaining the moment that she knew that Ghetts was destined for greatness was when he was 3 years old and he stood on the stage of a church choir concert in front of so many people. And then the track goes into sort of detailing Ghetts' life, Ghetts' autobiography, where he came from, what he struggled with, what his trials and tribulations were like growing up. And at the same time, it then transitions into a point where he's grateful for the things that he's gone through. He's grateful for the people he met on the way, such as Merkston, such as Devlin, BBK, Risky Roads, and all of the people that helped him create the videos or create the productions on his songs. Like, this is a very sort of thank you speech. This is a grateful moment in Ghetts' career where he has an opportunity to speak about himself, but also thank the people who have made him the man that he is today. And it was honestly such a beautiful track to listen to. And I just love how Ghetts breaks the fourth wall again by saying 4 minutes 48 seconds, and I've still got so much more to say. It's honestly amazing, and I just loved that part of the music. And it just shows again how in tune Ghetts is with his music, how much he loves to play around with his lyricism, but also at the same time just have moments where he can just be very reflective of the life that he's lived. There was another powerful moment in this song that honestly spoke so much volumes. Ghetts makes a social commentary about the state of music, but also the state of the industry, about how sometimes the industry can be so ruthless, how they don't care about mental health, how sometimes beefs happen that don't need to happen, how we need to sort of come more together, and artists need to sort of find ways in which they can stop the beef and actually find ways in which we can uplift each other. And how sometimes in a culture where negativity is sort of glorified, we need to find ways in which we can uplift and actually have partnerships and have a union. And, you know, the bar in which he mentions Dave Chappelle and how, you know, some people have to go away and come back because of how detrimental the industry has been to people's careers is such an eye-opening yet important moment that he mentioned in this track. And I feel like it's not heavily mentioned a lot sometimes, especially with someone as prominent as Ghetts. But the fact that he's taken time to go off and do that is honestly so beautiful. And at this point, you know, where Ghetts is sort of speaking about how the industry is starting to get into a place where it's critiquing people's artistry. You know, sometimes the way the industry is and the way the music culture has been, it has caused artists to sort of question themselves and actually question their own artistry and their own confidence. And making a commentary on that was very powerful. And it's at this point within the album that we can see it transition into more of Ghetts' introspective mind, Ghetts' reflective mood, Ghetts' heart in some way. And this is where it starts to transition with the song Good Hearts featuring Ida Lee, who provides very beautiful vocals in the backdrop, produced by Sir Spyro, and also the fact that it has a nice old school 2000s garage beat behind it was very, very beautiful and very reminiscent to hear. It was a nice touch to that album, I think. It was nice to sort of hear, you know, the wild escapades that Ghetts used to get up to when dealing with women, but also how he had his heart broken a few times. One of my favorite lyrics was, last time I got hit by Cupid, he brought a machine gun. And so it really kind of details how much Ghetts was in love, or how much, you know, Ghetts was very in tune with his feelings and in tune with his emotions, which was very beautiful to see throughout this track. The transition from Good Hearts to Dead to Me was very nice, because it really speaks about how Ghetts was heavily in love, and then now at the same time how Ghetts has had his heart broken to the point where it's changed him as a man. Even having a moment where, you know, the next time Cupid comes back, I'm gonna shoot him before he shoots me. And so it really kind of dives into the psyche of Ghetts' emotions and feelings, which I honestly loved. And having Good Hearts before, where he kind of speaks about him being in love with these girls and at the same time doing things that would get his heart broken. Dead to Me is just a moment where he's sort of relinquished all of those feelings and how his heart is fully broken to the point of no repair. And that was a very beautiful moment. I really liked that part, and I really liked how Ghetts structured that throughout the album. 10,000 Tears is honestly a very, very good song. I really liked Ghetts' attempt to go in this sort of melodic mood, and it honestly fits him so well. Him and Ed Sheeran have a very good chemistry in this track, and one doesn't really overwhelm the other, which is what I really liked throughout this. It was a very well balanced tune. It was a very well balanced song, and honestly the lyrics were very touching too. And what was nice was that the back end of the track is basically a voice note from what could be perceived as his current or previous partner, basically saying how much she doesn't like the fact that she's being compared to his first love, Sonia, and how she's trying the best that she can to give him what he wants. But every time he compares her to this woman, he compares her to her first love, it really takes away from what she's trying to do for him. And that beautifully transitions into the song Sonia, which features Emily Sandé, who I haven't heard in a long time, but she does this song justice. it was really nice to hear Ghetts be in a moment where he reflects on his first love. He reflects on how much she was there for him at the times where he went to prison, at the times he was coming up, but also at the same time, how much of a disconnect they had growing up. How much, as Ghetts started to progress, as Ghetts started to move on within his career, that he didn't know the person that she was, and that he was finding ways in which he wanted to get to know her again, or even see her again, but he wasn't sure whether she would know him or whether she would forget about him. And it was really nice to hear Emily Sandé speak from the perspective of Sonia. You know, I really love songs where they kind of dig into this sort of storytelling type of structure, and having, you know, Emily Sandé sing on the chorus, "Before you judge me, walk a mile in my shoes." And, you know, her speaking from the perspective of Sonia, saying, you know, I've been watching you grow. I've been watching you, you know, get to the person that you are today. And I'm just different because of the fact that I've just had stuff happen in my life. And, you know, before it got to that point, Ghetts did obviously mention how, you know, there were moments where I saw you and, you know, you weren't the same person that I used to know. And it's a very beautifully telling story of how sometimes the people you know and sometimes the people you fall in love with in the beginning don't turn out to be the people that you end up knowing them today. But that shouldn't change the feelings you have for them, nor should it change how you perceive them. And so for me, this was a very touching song. It was a very nice song to hear Ghetts be in that state, be in that emotional state, him reminiscing about his first love and the person who was there for him at moments where he didn't know who had him. Moving on to Proud Family. This was, again, another point in which Ghetts is able to sort of give us an insight as to what happens or what he thinks about when it comes to his life. And so he speaks about him growing up, but also how much the younger generation is reflective of how he used to be when he was younger. Moments where he would either go to Cunch, but how he's seeing these behaviors in people who are younger than him. And so how seeing his little nephew, who is now at a certain age that he was when he was going on these wild escapades, was a triggering moment for him, because he's like, now I need to become the role model so that I can show these kids how to go through a different path that doesn't require you to do illegal things, or that doesn't require you to live a life that you shouldn't have to live. And that was a very beautiful moment. It was a very nice thing to hear Ghetts say, because at the end of the day, he is doing initiatives and he is going on moments in real life where he is trying to get these things happening and get the ball rolling. So it was very beautiful to see Ghetts make that social commentary of how he used to be that type of person, and now he's seeing that in the younger generation. So he has a duty to make sure that he can be that role model. You know, he speaks about how important it is for him to be there for his children, and how much being a father is important within his life, but also within his children's lives. Even referencing moments in the song where he says he doesn't want the only time for his children to say father to be on Christmas. He wants it to be a continuous thing where he's there for them, where he's an active member. Another part of the song that was very beautiful was where he was going to say blood is thicker than water, but he stops himself and says blood is thicker than, but then he transitions to say, oh, how friends can actually easily transition into being family. And so, you know, just as much as you have family members that you're tied to by blood, you can also have friends who are just as close as your family are. And so Ghetts has these moments where he does this lyrically. He done it in Fine Wine, where there's a part of the song that pauses, but then he says, buffering, I'm still loading. And it's like these verbal word plays, these verbal nuances, the way he just flips these lyrics is just honestly amazing. He plays around and toys around with these words and these formats. It's just honestly such a beautiful thing. And in moments where he's in grime mode, he does that, but it's also such a beautiful thing to see that he does it when he's in his introspective and reflective moment as well. Now, moving on to the final third part of the album, and what better way to start it than with Skank Man featuring Stormzy, another previously released track that he had released a music video for. And again, it's just another testament to how well Ghetts does on this track. I personally think that it could have done without Stormzy, but Stormzy does provide good lyricism, and he does provide a nice, chilled, very laid back verse, which I found to be very interesting. And one thing I've noticed is that Ghetts loves to compete with his features, whether he's featuring someone who is another fellow grime artist or just someone who's another rapper. Aside from the introspective part and the reflective part of Ghetts, he loves to compete with his features, because you can tell, like, he'll have a verse, the feature will have a verse, then he will finish it off, and you can tell he has this sense of competition when it comes to his features, which is honestly amazing, because then he is his own competition as well as the person that he's featuring on. And it just spurs him and inspires him to go even harder than his first verse, which he always does. If you listen to Mozambique and if you listen to Skank Man, he does it flawlessly well. Moving into another hard-hitting track, No Mercy featuring Parsaloo and Backroad G, another previously released track. I honestly, again, like there isn't much to say apart from the fact that I love how hard-hitting this song is. I do like production-wise how it goes like constantly throughout the track. It's very catchy and you honestly find yourself unknowingly just saying it yourself, which I thought to be very cool. One thing I also did catch was that before Parsaloo came in, you can hear someone speaking in Gambian. They're actually swearing in Gambian, which is funny. But as someone who's Gambian myself, I do love how much Parsaloo honestly references where he comes from and references his Gambian culture. Backroad G does what he does best. Every time I listen to him, I just want to get into a fight. Every time I listen to him, I just want to ride out for whatever situation is going. I'm there. I want to mosh pit. Like, I want to get active. And so Backroad G has too much power in making me feel like that. Moving into Crud. Crud is another amazing song featuring Giggs. And one thing I always love is the relationship that Giggs and Ghetts have. They've had this relationship for so long. They've also previously collabed on Who Said That on the album Memento 2, The Return of Ghetto, and also on Gas Mark 9 with Rebel With a Cause. And so having these two go back and forth, like having Ghetts have his moment and then having Giggs have his moment, you can honestly just hear how well these two just go together. It's honestly no surprise to me, but also at the same time, like Giggs shells it, man. Giggs shells it, man. So as you can tell, I thoroughly enjoy this album. Now the final two tracks on this album is Squeeze featuring Mira May and Little Bo Peep featuring Dave, Hamza and Wretch 32. Now with Squeeze, oh my days, like the way the track starts on Squeeze honestly sounds like a hard-hitting Inception, Tenet-like film. Like, I want this song to be on a feature-length film. I want this song to be on a blockbuster film. The way the hard-hitting horns just captivate you instantly. Mira May's smooth, soothing vocals, followed by Ghetts' sort of harmonization with that as well, is so beautiful. And I genuinely think it is one of my favorite tracks on the album, next to Proud Family, Autobiography, and Fine Wine. Now, the final song on this album is Little Bo Peep. And honestly, from when I heard the pianos and I heard Hamza singing, I just knew that this was going to be a beautiful track. Ghetts makes a social commentary about how we need to stop following trends, how we need to stop following the things that don't bring us fulfillment and actually start finding things that really bring us our own identity, starting to find ourselves, but also at the same time finding ways in which we can help other people do that. And Dave comes in and honestly adds to that by basically saying, you're following someone, but who are you following? And how we need to normalize, normalize not glorifying negative things, but also speaking positively about our world and how we need to come together and actually glorify positivity a lot more. So it was a very beautiful dichotomy between, killing Bo Peep and not following her, but following God instead and letting him be the shepherd, because then you will find your own identity and find out what your purpose is. And so it was a very beautiful way to round off the album. It was a very beautiful way to end things, and Wretch 32 adding his moment, Hamza having her moment, was just so beautiful, and it was just so fulfilling to watch. And that is it. That is my review of Ghetts' album Conflict of Interest. Honestly, it was just so beautiful to see how much Ghetts has evolved as an artist, and now he's in a moment where this is second nature to him, and having this moment where he's very reflective, but also at the same time he's just shelling everything, was just so beautiful. And it honestly reminded me of, seeing Jay-Z go from a moment where he had this moment where he had, Reasonable Doubt, and now he has 444. He had that moment where he can shell. He had that moment where he can go into his own mode, and now he's in a very reflective mood. And this was the vibe that I got from listening to Conflict of Interest. And no, I'm not comparing Ghetts to Jay-Z because they're two very individual great artists, but I'm saying in which the journey that Ghetts has had and where he's at right now within this album honestly speaks to where he's at in life. and I found that to be very beautiful and very, very good. Listen, easily, it's too early, but I don't care. Easily one of my most favorite albums this year to date. And so, with that being said, my name is Archibald III. Thank you so much. If you've reached this part, thank you, because you clearly like this content and you clearly like what you're watching. So, if you like, subscribe, leave a comment, engage, and let's have a conversation. And with that being said, thank you. Peace.